Want to be a speaker but aren't sure what to talk about, where to start, or how to offer your services from stage? Tonight, we're talking about tell your story to sell your product. You don't want to miss tonight's show.
Our goal is simple: to help you achieve the dream and vision you first had when you thought about starting a business. We're here to make growing your business less complicated. There are building blocks to build a sustainable business. We promise to seek them out and address them all. The Better Your Business Show starts now.
Welcome to tonight's episode of the Better Your Business Show. I am Natalie Essman, your host, and my partner in crime, Miss Shanna Mavis. And tonight we are going to be talking about telling your story to sell your product.
And we all have a story to tell.
Yes, we do.
Especially you. I don't want it to go without saying you need to tell people what's going on with you and telling stories, Natalie. You're gonna share it?
Because I just published my first children's book. It actually was officially published on March 10th, Bella's Playground Adventure. And I had my first sale within like 18 hours. So that was super exciting. So that was fun. So that's kind of my goal this year, is to get into books, which has been just a childhood dream of mine forever. So it's really exciting to see it come into fruition. I'm a little obsessive. I have to watch myself because my husband comes in my office and like brings me food. He's joking around like he's kind of tossing at me like, is the beast going to come out? Are you going to eat? But when you get sucked in like that, that's just how it is sometimes. So I'm having a good time. But yeah, it's exciting. Thank you for asking.
It is exciting. Yeah, no, it is exciting, and I have a surprise for you a little bit later. But yeah, I'm excited about the topic as well, because I think a lot of business owners underestimate the power of storytelling. And our guest expert tonight, there's a different take on it, and highly recommended for anyone that's acting as their own CEO, not just a small business owner or not just a solopreneur, or even, with solopreneurs, looking at this from a different standpoint, right? I need to tell a story in order for people to understand who I am, who I serve, what is this all about? What am I doing this for? Being able to share that type of information in a way that resonates with their audience. I'm so curious about, how to translate what she does into just the realm of small business owners and those aspiring or new business owners, solopreneurs wanting to grow a business, shifting out of that, and how it helps different industries. Even looking at it from that standpoint, are there things that I should be looking out for when I'm telling a story if I'm part of retail versus if I'm a coach, right? So I'm excited to, learn from her, but I get that way every week. Like, I'm really excited to hear what I'm going to learn, because then I'll go and tell people and they're like, you sound smart. And I'm like, yeah, I'm repeating what I overheard last night. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Well, and the number one fear is obviously fear of public speaking, right? But I think that, from my experience, I'm not really sure Lisa's the expert, so she could be like, wrong, Natalie, you're totally wrong. So I am excited to have this conversation with her. But I always think, there's a process to it, right? There's your beginning, there's your middle, and your end. Now you're going to start, now you're going to finish. And so anytime that I've worked with individuals where we have been speaking, that's one of the things that we always reiterate, or sometimes you don't have to practice, is how do you close out? Because people don't really know how to stop talking sometimes. And it's not because they don't want to. In the back of their mind, they're trying, they're going like, how do I wrap this up? I don't know how. And they're like going over their time and they're just like, I don't know how to stop. So, my thoughts are, if you're working with someone like Lisa, what happens is you kind of understand your system, you understand your process. You have someone that's been doing this that can give you, coaching and feedback to where boundaries should be set. Hey, hey, talk a little bit deeper on this, or you don't need to be so vulnerable in that area. And that you get a lot of confidence from that, to where, hey, the public speaking is not a big deal. And if you look at from just a monetization standpoint, to me, there's just no better way to get your business, your brand, who you are out there than public speaking. So I think this is an awesome topic for people. I'm thrilled that she's here. She's had her company since 2017. She's done over 600 personal speaking engagements herself. So I would think she knows a thing or two, right? And she teach entrepreneurs how to do that as well. So Lisa Reed, she is the CEO of the International Speakers and Network, and she is the founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now. So Miss Lisa Reed, if you could bring her to the stage.
Hello.
All right. We are thrilled that you are here.
Yeah, I had so many thoughts and ideas as you were talking. So I'm excited to be here as well, and just really break open any myths or fears that people might be having about sharing their story, getting out there, what that would look like for their business. So I'm excited to dive in.
So have you always been completely comfortable in front of people speaking, telling your story?
I could lie and say, no, I started as a really shy introvert, but that would be a lie. That would be a lie. And I'm not going to do that to y'all. No, there's a story. When I had first moved to Fairbanks, Alaska, I was 2 years old, and my dad took me to a Spanish speaking daycare, because he had been raised in California, a lot of Spanish speaking people, because he wanted me to still learn Spanish. He thought that would be great if she could learn while she's in daycare Spanish. What an opportunity. So he found somehow in Fairbanks, Alaska, a Spanish speaking daycare. He comes to pick me up the full day out, at the end of the day. And I'm teaching all of the kids English. So I don't remember this. It's just the story that he would tell me. And I'm like, I guess I just, can't help myself. I just can't help myself. But I will say it's not required. I have a lot of clients who started more introverted or didn't really think they would be a speaker. But now there's a saying in our business, it's like the message gets bigger than your fear, right? Like all of a sudden you've got something and people can benefit from it, or there's something that you see mistakes being made out there and you can really help people. That's a big deal. And all of a sudden you're like, well, hold on, I could explain about that. I could teach someone about that. I could share some examples. And then public speaking doesn't seem so scary.
Right. Exactly. To me, because you just made it logical. That makes sense. It's very logical. But really, but when it comes to public speaking, it's a very emotional thing for us to do, right? So what do you see as the when people come to you at that point, is it because, hey, I'm just ready to throw myself out there, or is it because
it's usually here's a good way to think of it. This is what people confess to me. All right. I get client confessions. They say to me, I just had someone say this the other day. I know that I need to share my story. I know people have been telling me for years, I need to get out there. I need to speak. I'm a really good speaker. I've been thinking this for many, many years, and they don't, for whatever reason, there's things that have been in their way of not being able to get to that point, maybe a different career or raising a family or some kind of distraction. Someone said they couldn't do it or they shouldn't believe in themselves, but it gets to a point where you're like, no, I really need to do this. And that's when we have a conversation.
Okay, so I feel like I'm at that place right now. I was just inspired by what you said, and I was like, that sounds exactly like me. No, I actually have, well, I don't really have a fear of public speaking, obviously. Even in front of crowds of people, I actually, there's a shift that happens. And, I wish everyone could experience that, because for me, it started with me becoming a trainer. And, doing this at H&R Block, I was able to, I started teaching soft skills, became a certified master instructor. But in order to do that, I had to go through this process of, a room full of, 100 people or so. And it's just like, okay, well, now you don't have any preparation time. You've got to go and teach this particular segment of this course. And being able to go in there and do that, for me, it's always just been this moment where I get that nervous energy, and then I embrace that. And it's just like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? This is going to be 20 minutes of my life. In the grand scheme of things, with as many years as I've been alive, this is nothing, right? So why not? Why not just try that? But
Yeah.
I'd love to really hone that, and that's where people like you come in handy, is just deciding what story to tell. And I think about business owners from that perspective, really coming into this, as we say, hey, you need to tell a story. If you've got, product or service or what have you, you're going to have to tell some story around it so that people can understand. That's how we want to consume things now, is that storytelling aspect. So from that perspective, for those people who aren't as comfortable, or who don't feel like, I've got it in me, I'm intimidated by this, are there any tips that you can offer to, like, those business owners, solopreneurs, about getting their story out? What steps should they take?
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm going to be a little counterintuitive here, because I wouldn't even lead with that you have to tell your story. I would lead with, what do people need to know? What are you constantly sharing with people that they're mistaken about, or some kind of value that you can offer an audience about whatever your topic is? And that's a great place to start, because then all of a sudden we're not as nervous. We're like, oh, well, I know all this stuff about this stuff, right? And it just makes it easier to share. Now, there may be a story in there that we can add, but different people have different styles. You were talking about, people being afraid or having resistance, or just a little, it's vulnerable. So I start people where they are. Like, I would never say, you need to be really vulnerable and tell your deep, dark secret story to someone who's terrified to get up there speaking. They would never do it. Right. So we have to, like, kind of, we're going to, and maybe that's not even appropriate at all. It depends on your business, your personality, your audience, like all those things go into that speaker salad. Right. And so not all the salads are exactly the same. Now, I had one client who had a traumatic event happen, and it was kind of recent. It was like within the last year or two. And it prompted her to start selling life insurance, because she realized there was so much she didn't know, and she didn't want that to happen to anybody else. Right. When we first started working together, she told every detail about the story. We went to the store, and then we picked up the tomatoes, and then I'm exaggerating, but it was like all the details. And I'm like, okay, we need to truncate it so that you have the highlights that really hit the audience. This is what happened, then this happened, and this is what we learned, and I don't want that to happen to anyone else, right? And that was really powerful for her, to be able to shrink it down, even though it was a traumatic, personal, vulnerable story.
So how difficult, it seems like that might be challenging to rein it in. And working with, because like Natalie brought it up, it was just like, how do you keep from running over? You get excited, you get out there, you're not really paying attention. How long of a process is it? And I know it varies depending on the person, right? But on average, how long does it take to really get through to where it's just like, okay, I've got my, type 5?
It's kind of like asking how many licks to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop, right? It sort of depends. It depends on, I have yet to meet any speaker or client who has exactly the same journey, or they're at the exact same spot. Everybody's kind of coming in with different stuff. So I think that's what's nice about working with a coach or someone who can guide you, who's been there, is let's see what you have. Let's put it all on the table. Okay, now where are the gaps? Where are the holes? And what do we need to work on to fill it? Instead of it being a process that everyone does exactly the same thing. And I know, as busy business owners, entrepreneurs, it's not like they're necessarily saying, gee, I have nothing else going on in my life. All I can do is focus on speaking. No, they want to do something that gets them business, gets it faster, hopefully a little more fulfilling. So we want to just get from point A to point B the fastest, right? How can we get there the quickest? One way that I find to be really helpful is we do this thing called Get Your Talk Ready to Rock, where we go like, okay, let's dial in, do a deep dive. What are the 3 main things that you could teach someone or help someone, or what comes to you? And we start to uncover your brilliance. It's usually the goosebump moment where you're like, oh my gosh, that's what it is. That's what I tell people. And then we start to build the talk around those things. We have a call to action. We end up with the description. We end up with the title. Once that's created, all of a sudden the person is like, oh, cool. Like, I don't have to worry about what I'm going to talk about anymore. I know what I'm going to talk about. And I don't mean a script. I'm not talking about a script. I don't recommend that. But you know your key points, right? And so then it builds from there. Then you go practice it. I always say the first talk you give, don't give it in front of your ideal clients. Everything's riding on that talk. No. Give it to your cat and the neighbors, a couple of times. Give it to some local groups that are friendly. May not be practice it. It's like Jerry Seinfeld, when he goes out and has new content, you'll see him pop up at an improv, random on a Wednesday night, practicing his the delivery. They're shopping it out. They're testing it out. And so that's what you can do as a speaker too. And the more you do it, the better it gets. I always say we all had to learn to tie our shoes. We didn't give up, right? Oh, I didn't do it right the first time. I'm never tying my shoes again. No, you just keep trying, and then eventually you get a nice tight knot, a tight bow.
Yeah, and it's usually our first time's usually not as bad as we think it is, or even if it is, the people around us are so just happy that we got out of our comfort zone and that we were out there to share it and they heard our story. No one cares if it's perfect or if that you made mistakes or if you got emotional, right? Everyone's thrilled about all the other aspects of it. So
yeah, there's no perfect anyway, right? Like the first time I gave my talk, so I first started speaking in 2013 for a personal development company. And so they had the talk that they provided for me, and I practiced it like a quadrillion times. But I finally had somebody who believed in me. I knew her, and I called and I said, hey, do you know anyone who maybe has this outside speakers come in? Here's my topic. And she goes, oh, well, I do. I have a group. Come and speak to my group. I said, oh, great. That's wonderful. Group of women, about 10 women in a conference room. They did not know it was my first time giving the talk. She didn't know I was not going to tell her it was my first time giving the talk. And I was selling this workshop for about $300. 4 people signed up for the workshop and then ended up spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars after that. And I did not know what I was doing.
Well, I would argue that.
Go out there and do it.
Yeah, you did something right, Lisa.
Yeah, it sounds like you knew exactly.
Yeah, you provide value for people, of course.
I mean, you started when you were 2, so it's not.
Exactly.
So how do you help people who feel like, I don't have a story to tell? This is so ordinary, or everyone is familiar with this. How do you help overcome just that misconception? Because I feel like everyone does it. And I know that you gave us a few tips earlier where it's just really meeting them where they are. But if I don't feel like there's anything spectacular or story worthy, where do we go from there?
Well, usually I don't often get that concern, at least told to me, confessed to me, because usually people know, there's a deep knowing of like, people need to hear this. I know I should be talking about this. I got to be sharing this. And it's almost like a little tap on the shoulder, like a little, and then eventually it becomes a 2x4 that just is like, okay, I got to get out there and tell people. Now, that doesn't mean that they know exactly what they're going to share. And so kind of back to like, how do I edit out all the stuff? Like, I know all this stuff, or maybe I think it's boring or whatever. How do I decide what comes out, right, in the talk? And that's what we do in the Get Your Talk Ready to Rock session. That's why it's so powerful, because I just had a client I was helping with the other day, and he had a certain phrase about, he does executive coaching, and a certain phrase that he would share about, and I won't say it because I don't want to, breach any confidentiality, but It was like, okay, I get it. Like intellectually I understood what that was. It didn't like hit me really or anything, but I'm like, it was fine. When we go into the session, all of a sudden he says something really, really powerful and juicy. And I'm like, wait, what was that? Let's talk about that. And he realized that he was feeling resistance around saying that phrase in the corporate world, but that was what he really wanted to talk about. And he was like, oh my gosh, I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps. And so when we really start to talk about what our soul's wisdom is guiding us to, nothing's boring, right? Our soul wisdom is not boring. But sometimes we just are trying to make it sound right or tell people what they want to hear, and that's not the kind of work that I'm talking about.
That's good.
Great.
Yeah. Because the authenticity piece is what, and as you know, Natalie, as you were talking earlier, that's what that, you said something that sparked that in me. It's just that you said people get emotional, you know, it's to be expected, but I think people crave that because we know that it's, I know that it's real. This touched me in that same way, and to see on your face, to understand where you're coming from in the way that you're telling this story. Again, business, personal, looking at all sides of that. I think we as a society are really leaning into that and gravitating towards those stories that where it does feel real. It's not the, you know, Instagram as we're live, Instagram life, right? This is raw. This is not polished. And I agree with you. I prefer talking points over a script. I like to wing it. And, you know, my team, it used to, when I worked at this company, my team, there was one person on there, the marketing person, she was just like, please don't get on there and wing it again. And I was just like, no, it works for me.
Well, there's a difference between winging it, but if you have your bullets and you know, then I do recommend people practicing to get it to. So here's what, have you guys ever heard of the phrase or the concept of unconscious competence?
Yes.
So when you practice, even though you don't say it exactly the same time or same way every single time, or you're not reading it, but when you practice each time, your body is going, okay, oh yeah, it starts to get less clunky. The transitions are easier. You might come up with a really cool story or a tip that you didn't think of before. So that power of the practice is amazing. And it allows your body to calm down, allows the nervous system to calm down. And I practice. I mean, my dog has heard my talk a bunch of times. Like she's heard it so many times. You think she'd be, I don't even know why she's not on payroll. She should be coaching people at this point. But I practice too. It's not like, oh, I don't ever practice.
Exactly. I know that when I was running an agency, that was something that people were, because we would do seminars and I would be speaking 3 days a week at them. And they were actually surprised at how much I was still practicing 15 years later. But for exactly the reason that you said, it wasn't so much that, you know, I told that same story. It's the same, you know, chart. It's the same principles every time. But at the way that I felt, like my confidence, the belief in what I was talking about, my flow, it was completely different. The way that I felt, because I was like, I am prepared. I know, you know, I went up there and it was a completely different game that I was walking into than if I just, and I know this isn't what you mean when you say wing it, Shanna, but like if I had just gone up there and you know, kind of made it up as I was going along. I know that's not what you mean, Shanna, but it gave me a different level of confidence and belief transfers.
Sometimes I did, Natalie. I was known for going rogue. And she was like, okay, from a marketing perspective, I need for you to stay within these boundaries. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll stay within boundaries, but just know I'm not going to have anything, you know, fully perfect. But I knew, right? So again, it was that unconscious competence. I knew the product inside and out. I knew, you know, the parameters. I just would never quite deliver it the same until, you know, and I guess I always used a lot of the like demo times and the initial stages of training at that company. I used those as my practice rounds, where it's just like, okay, I mean, I know it's going to be good enough. And I know I can, stand up there for the few hours, but by, the third or fourth time, it was just like, okay, I know what joke is going to hit. I know,
Yeah.
I knew exactly how to deliver the entire thing. And that helped us tremendously um, as the company because it solidified for them. Not only do we get this understanding, but we have more of an idea. They knew that I wasn't just there, reading off something. I wasn't it made a significant difference. But there were boundaries. I guess we did establish those. And
Well, I want to commend you for having that gift that not everyone, you actually do the hard stuff, and that's connecting with people on an emotional level, right? You could have read it exactly how it's supposed to say and stayed in all the lines and never went outside the space, but then would have been bored to tears. They would have thought this company doesn't care about us. They just want our money or whatever. But instead, you're building a relationship. You're connecting with them. You're addressing the elephant in the room or whatever's going on. You're connecting with the different people. And that is a harder thing to do. It's not natural for everyone, but that's really powerful. So, yeah.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
And now if I work with you, then the world is my oyster. All right. I know we are getting close to time for the Just Good Business segment. We've skipped this a couple of times, but I do want to call out this company. They support women who have been impacted by trafficking by offering them, it's a beautiful story, right? So they offer them resources. They are committed to helping them see their value and, providing employment and trafficking from many different standpoints. But yeah, I just love what they're doing with this and how they empower these women to see more value in themselves and share that with the world. So, Carlton, if you want to go ahead and get that going, I think we're going to see it here in just a little bit. But it's called Rethreaded. They are a company out of Florida.
Rethreaded's mission is to renew hope, reignite dreams, and release potential for survivors of human trafficking through business.
Women have employment opportunities in production, inventory, sales, marketing, and finance and administration.
I love Rethreaded because I get to watch women become who they're created to be. Because if you give women access to a new community and economic empowerment, that they will reclaim their lives. Because I believe in each of us, we have hope, dreams, potential, and when we have access to a community of love and empowerment, that it releases who we're created to be.
One of the most amazing parts of the community that we have here is that it builds a safe space for ladies to learn and grow and heal. And one of the biggest gifts I think that we give is time. To be able to step out of the chaos and to be able to heal and have the support that you need as you move through that difficult process. Employment is the real solution. It's the piece that builds the confidence and the strength and the stability for the ladies to retake their lives and be able to stand on their own 2 legs.
Rethreaded's vision is to never say no to a woman who's ready to start a new life.
Awesome.
Wow.
I loved that.
Muted.
You're
I'm
muted,
unmuted. Yeah. I did too. I mean, a lot of those, that's what we try to do is really focus on those companies that are doing something that's, purpose beyond profit. And so the fact that they are really looking at these women, again, meeting them right where they are, but you can heal, restoring their hope and showing them, just the value that they have to offer, regardless of the trauma, regardless of, what they've been through. That's part of who they are, but it's not the end, right? So it made me very happy when I saw that.
Yes, definitely. Awesome. All right, so we have Lisa Reed here tonight, and we are talking about getting speaking gigs. She's a founder of gettingspeakinggigs.now. Tonight, we're talking about tell your story to sell your product. Now, my guess is, Lisa, that really we all just need one good talk. Is kind of just how I see it, right? We just need one good talk, which is our story, and then depending on where we're speaking, we can lengthen or shorten that time, right? Depending on that's my perspective of kind of how that goes. Is that correct?
I think as you, just like you're an author, right? You start with one and then you start to collect a little bit more. So I have many talks that I could give, but I usually focus on one at a time. For me, it's very personal. I will start to sense that a new talk is coming, and then it just starts to come, like it'll come like when I'm getting ready in the morning or starting to go to sleep, and I'll start to write notes, and then I'll realize, oh, okay, I'm supposed to talk about something a little bit different. A new talk is here, and I start to craft that. And then I know I can always pull out an old one if I want to, but it's just an evolution of the message. But I have other speaker colleagues who have 3 or 4 different signature talks. When I start with a speaker who's newer, I absolutely have them focus on one, because otherwise you'll end up having to, write one, do the slides for one, practice it. And then if you times that by 2 and 3, oh my gosh, it's too much. It's too confusing. You're already trying to learn how to give a talk and everything like that. It just ends up usually a little overwhelming. So we start with one.
And does that depend on what type of business the person has as well?
Not necessarily. It's really, and I don't live by like these really hard and fast rules. I don't say you can't do this or you can do that, but I just give them what I would recommend, especially if I know their personality. I work pretty closely with my clients. I'm like, okay, I know that here's an example. You both work with entrepreneurs. So this is what usually is happening. They're like, I want to create this. I want to create, okay, I want to have a podcast. Then I'm going to have videos. Then I'm going to have a TV show. I'm going to do some social media. I got to have my mailing done. I got emails. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a poem. I'm going to write a haiku. And then I'm going to start speaking. And I'm like, okay, whoa. Okay, hold on a second. Because see, because this is what this, I said, I'm like that too. I am not judging. My husband's like, you're doing what now? So I get it. I said, but here's what we need to do. We need to focus on we're going to build a building today. We're going to build a house like today. And then maybe we'll build another house next to it. And then eventually we'll have an empire, right? I know you can see the vision of the empire in front of you, but we can't do it all in one day. We have to make a decision. So I try to I'm like, I'm not crushing your dreams. I'm just saying, like, we need to focus on one thing at least so that we can make some progress.
And there's a delicate balance there, because you're absolutely right. I feel like you were in a couple of the conversations that I had this week, where it's just like, visionaries are visionaries, right? And it's not just one, and they cannot help it. I was talking to someone. I ended up writing them an email and just letting them know, this is part of the reason, this is part of my why, because they need that focus and they need that peace, just to calm them down, because there's so many different ideas and I can do all of this. And I believe that, but you're absolutely right. It is one thing at a time. Let's focus on this and get this going, get this handed off to a team, if at all possible. So then you can move on to, attaining your next vision, right? I don't want to be a dream crusher either. I feel I feel that way sometimes, and they do get dejected, but it's just like, well, if we can just focus on this one area, and spend the time or the resources or figure that out, we can keep moving. But it's going to take a team of people. You are going to need people to continue moving on because it's ongoing, right? It isn't just you can't just stop there and expect that this is going to, magically just keep going because you had this powerful start.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
there's another metaphor that comes to mind, especially like so I'm in there like helping them build the speaking house, right? It's like, okay, how are we going to get this house built? Now, then that comes with another barrage of like all these other things that we need. Well, what am I going to talk about? Who am I going to talk to? What's my offer going to be? Do I need a landing page? Who's going to know about it? How am I going to get booked? Who would I talk to? How much do I charge, and etc. So I say, here's the thing. We're going to get dinner on the table. Now, somehow, even though it's all going to get on the table at the same time, we aren't cooking everything exactly at the same time. But maybe while that's in the oven, we'll do some chopping for the salad, so and that's in the microwave, and then we're defrosting this other thing. So it's happening. And so it's okay to be working on multiple things, but we just need to be patient that it's all going to come together. And they're usually just like, but I want to get out there. And I'm like, okay, I know, we're doing it. We're going to do it. It's all happening. And then eventually usually like 2 months in, they're like, oh, that makes sense what you said the other day. I remember now, you were telling me. And I said, yep, it's all part of the picture. But we can only absorb so much at one time.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess as you were saying that, it was just like a lot of especially visionary business owners, not just your average ordinary business owner, but visionary business owners. I want to prepare my Thanksgiving meal and my Christmas meal and my Easter meal and my 4th of July cookout. I want all of those. I want those all at the table right now. And it's just like, well, okay, one, maybe we should focus on the holiday that's closest, at hand, if we can get everything. Now, there's no harm if there's, you're going to have turkey for Thanksgiving, you're going to have turkey for Christmas. So, if you want to go ahead and prep, some of those vegetables, freeze them, you can do any number of things that have to do with the same thing, but we're going to focus on the Thanksgiving meal first, right? So it is, there is that drawback, but again, we all understand it because if you're a visionary, you completely understand, where those business owners are coming from. That's just how they operate. There's nothing wrong. It's just who they are. And Natalie is, and we talk about this all the time. She is a visionary, and she's got so many ideas, and I'm just like, okay, wait. let's do this one first. Let's try this.
Pops my balloons, Lisa, is what she does. She pops my balloons. She's the kid at the park that's like, bing, bing, bing. No, I'm just kidding.
Done Strength Finder? Have you done Strength Finder?
No,
I haven't. No.
It's cool. Like a quiz. It's a test that is used in therapy or coaching or things like that, business, and it helps you identify like what your top strengths are. And so I can relate to you, Shanna, because I'm an activator, and my husband's an ideator, meaning well, we have multiple, but like when we did it, they give you like your top 5, and his was ideator, which is like coming up with a lot of these ideas. And when we first started dating, I'm like, okay, well, let's do that idea then. And he's like, whoa, I'm just thinking of the ideas. It made me realize like, oh, okay, we don't have to do anything. I'm going to just chill, because my tendency would be to go do the thing. But for an activator, it's like, oh, well, it could be stressful because you're thinking, how are we going to get all this stuff done? Right. And the ideator's like, I'm just thinking of ideas. It's cool.
Yeah. It is amazing. But there's that balance, and we need all of us, right? Because there are certain things that if she weren't always coming up with ideas, and we may not be able to execute every one of those, but we've got those, and it's just like, okay, let's put that over here. That's what's going in the microwave. This is what's going in the oven because we've got a little bit more time. It really is. It's nice to have that balance, but you need that.
Absolutely.
And it helps, and I guess if we want to bring that back around to storytelling, but it does help because you're able to dive in deeper and connect more. These are the pieces. This is the how this is being done, helping people to understand and not everything is rushed. They get to enjoy it, right? So
Yeah.
it's more of that for me.
I had one thing that I do hear sometimes is that actually I was just having a conversation with a gal yesterday, and she's like, I have so many stories. I have so many things. I have so many things to choose from. I don't know where to start. And so she told me, and oftentimes we're holding it so much in our head, we don't realize that actually when we say it out and put it on paper, digital paper, it's not that much. Like, I mean, not that it's not significant. It was, but it was like, oh, actually that makes a lot of sense now. And we were able to decide which one gets the front burner, which one's in the back burner, and what matches what her business is now. I had another gentleman, totally different story. He used to own all these franchises, and I mean like a lot, like 70 franchises. And he had an opportunity where someone purchased them, but he wasn't really ready to, retire. He still wanted to give back. So he's like, how would I turn what all my knowledge is? How would I turn that into a talk? We started to isolate the stories that were super powerful for him in what had really changed the business and how he'd help people make so much money, and each of his stores were profitable. He didn't even give his talk yet, but he shared one of those stories with a equity firm and got like multi-million-dollar deal just by sharing the story. So when we start to really identify what they are, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, I need that. I feel like, okay, Lisa, no, for real, I feel like I've got a multi-million-dollar story inside of me.
Yeah. Most of us do, right? Yeah.
So how do we find the balance between, being too logical in our talks? How do we find that balance? Because for me, that's kind of always where I want to go. That's like my safe zone. If I feel like, oh, I'm teaching them something, I'm being logical, that's very easy for me to do. Paint by number, go through the steps. This is how it works, right? But if you ask me to sit in front of that same room and be vulnerable, that's going to be very different. So how do you kind of find that balance where you are able to connect with people? Because that's important. Obviously, you want to be able to connect with your audience. Not be throwing up all over them, but at the same time, not being so analytical that they are bored and falling asleep anyway.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think will be really helpful for you. One is when you're speaking, you want to do a couple things right out the gate. You want to build rapport and connection, like what we were talking about, what Shanna was doing, right? And with the team, where you have to do the same presentation over and over again. It's like, how do I make this fun? How do we mix it up a little bit? And that was that rapport and connection. And then the second thing is your authority. Like, why should I listen to, like, do I like this person? And then the authority is, why should I listen to them? What do they know that I should be paying attention? And so that's more your logical piece, or maybe like where you went to college, or your degrees, or your books that you wrote, or certifications that you have, et cetera, years in the business. And so if you start to realize that you can weave those things in a certain way, now you know your purpose of doing it. So I think for you, Natalie, it's like, well, if you don't have a reason to be vulnerable, like if it doesn't make sense to you, then you're not going to do it, or you'll feel weird about it, because it would be weird, right? You don't have to be vulnerable necessarily to be a speaker. It's more just that it's vulnerable because you're the only one up there. That's vulnerable already, doing that.
Right.
But you don't need to share your, all your stuff. I had one client who, she used to be a speaker for a software company and was a really successful speaker. Ended up going through a tragedy in her life, lost her husband pretty soon, unexpectedly, and started to, as she was coming out of that, work on the grieving process. And she had created this really beautiful program and things for corporate in terms of grief and how would we work with that. And she came to me because she's like, is it okay that I talk about death and dying? Like, what if I cry on stage? Is that weird? Is that okay? Who would want to have me speak about that, right? And when we started to work on why that was important and that she wasn't going to be bait and switching people, right? It was okay. And she ended up I think she ended up getting like a $10,000 speaking engagement. So as long as we're not misleading, if you go like, I'm going to speak about finances or financial planning or advising, and then you come and rip your heart out, that would probably be a little bit of a mismatch. They would be like, what is happening here? But you could certainly share, yes, I'm in finance and I advise people, but something you may not know about me, I just published these journals, and I just published my first children's book. It's and that can create some rapport and make you interesting and make, oh, wow, cool. So different ways.
I like that. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question about I guess, how effective is it? And if you have any statistics around this, when we think about the solopreneurs and the like aspiring business owners or new business owners, how effective or important is it to be in front of people, like with speaking engagements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are there statistics around that just say, hey, do that? Because we've been told, write books, become a thought leader. How are you doing all of that? And what part does the speaking engagement play in it?
I think one thing, speaking is one of the quickest ways to cash. It's a way for you to, as long as you have a valuable message to your ideal clients, and you're in that room, that's a way to literally have someone walk right up to you and say, I want what you have. Where do I get started? What do I need to do? I want to work with you, whatever. I mean, that happens on the regular, right? To speakers. Or, they're signing up for your thing online, even if it's virtual, maybe they're walking up to you virtually. That's an easy get, because you don't need any fancy schmancy systems, right? You already are pretty good at what you do. So it's like, how do I share my expertise in a way that's really valuable? So that's kind of nice. It's kind of a relief for people. We're like, oh, like, yeah, write a book. I wrote a book, but I was speaking for years before I wrote a book. My first book, I've written 8 books. The reason I wrote my first book was because I was tired of them asking me if I had a book. It wasn't because I really wanted to write one. I just was like, fine, I'll write a book. Anyway, but I like that I have a book, because then it gives me the authority, right? If we go back to those 2 things, like, and maybe someone's like, well, I'm not sure. I want to read her book first. I want to check that out. That's a way they can kick the tires. So all those different ways of visibility can help people. As long as all the roads lead to Rome, we're in the right spot.
Great question.
Yeah. What about the fact that people notoriously have short attention spans? How are you, I guess, how do we factor that in as we think about speaking and, my topic and telling my story?
Well, yeah, you got to make them interested, right? You can't. I'm sure that you have been a victim of a very boring talk before. I know I have, and it's painful. So that's when everyone's video's off. So there's ways that and they're all checking Facebook, or whatever. So you do have to have a certain skill of that thing that you're naturally good at, Shannon, and probably you too, Natalie, is creating the rapport. Are people feeling seen, heard, understood? Is this a valuable topic for them? You don't want to mismatch. So I would say, like, just any speaking engagement, we don't want to just date anyone. We don't want to just go and speak anywhere, right? We want to make sure that we're in the right room with the right person, and that we're using the tools, whether you're in person or virtual, that you are engaging with people in a way that makes them want to lean in, that makes them interested. Like, I'm here to serve. I'm here to deliver the goods to you.
Right. Engaging questions, using people's names, stuff like that.
That makes a huge difference. Using people's names. That was one of the things, because I had, and I still do, I think, my memory was really good. So I could go into a room of 30 people, I'm training 30 people. And by the end of that first class, it's just like, I would go all the way back through and tell them each, what their name was. And that really impressed so many. It was my parlor trick. But it was just
I
like,
think you and I
I
are
don't
from
have
the
to do it.
same. We are sisters from another mister or something, because I used to do that when I would teach at the university when I was in my 20s, and I would have the first day they'd have to put their picture on a card. This is in the 90s. And then I would go home and I'd memorize all the names. And the next day, next class, I'd come back in and I knew everyone's name. They're like, their jaws dropped. They could not believe it. They always showed up. Never skipped my class.
Yeah,
It makes a difference.
it does. People love to hear their name.
Yeah, yeah.
So awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You brought a tremendous amount of value. I hope that people will reach out to you. I know that let me see if I get on here. Here is getspeakinggigs.now. .com/, I think, there we go, /tips. Go there and you'll get tips, some speaker tips, which, I mean, having a clear message, I just think, is everything. Whether you're doing public speaking, whether you're sharing stuff on social media, where you're going to a networking group, you need to have a congruent message. So I just love what you're doing for entrepreneurs. I think it makes such a difference, and helping people get clear on their message really helps people get clear on their message, right? Who they are, what they're doing. It just helps make their business better. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Really great stuff.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yes. Awesome. All right.
All right. Got some money to talk about, Natalie. Hopefully Carlton will bring up the first URL. There's a beauty. So for all of you beauty businesses, extension artists, braiders, estheticians, barbers, salon owners, suite owners, students, and stylists nationwide, L'Oreal and the NAACP are partnering to bring another 10K grants. They're actually giving away 20 $10,000 one-time grants between the NAACP and the Hispanic Federation. So that sounds to me like 40 grants of $10,000 each. So if you're in the beauty industry, they are going to give preference to people of color, but if you're in the beauty industry, go and apply for it. You might get one of these 10K grants. The other one is for these aspiring and new authors of children's books. So the SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, they have various grants and awards throughout the year. I thought about Natalie whenever I was looking for this, because I was like, okay, she just published her first children's book, looking for illustrators, so they provide support for that. So if you go to their website, SCBWI, you go to their website, you can find grants. I found a $2,500 grant for self-published. It's coming up. I think that's toward the end of the year. But they also have $1,000 awards if you're self-published, independently published, community, all of these different grants and awards. Go check it out if you are an aspiring or new author of a children's book.
Yay.
Like Natalie, yes.
Yay. I will definitely do that. How fun and exciting. I'm really good at winning things too.
I know.
So I'm excited. And that's tonight's Money Minute, right? Have that be your affirmation. All right. So for tonight's Money Minute, I wanted to just share a few books with you guys to just help. Awareness is the first step to change, right? So a few books. If you're not an entrepreneur, you definitely need to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. If you're, trying to learn how to become an entrepreneur, those are two must-have staples in where you need to get started. You need to understand the mindset is different, what your mindset is, and how do you shift your mindset, because it's a process. Shifting your mindset's a process. So start there. If you are like, hey, I got this entrepreneur thing down, what I need to get better is my finances. So Money, Master the Game by, oh my gosh, why can't I think? Tony, can't think of his last name right now. The speaker, the guy.
Tony Robbins?
Tony Robbins. I don't know why I couldn't think of his last name. Tony Robbins, Master the Money Game is a great one. It's, all three of those books, they're thick reads. They're, but they're important, right? They're the basics, they're the fundamentals, and then Think and Grow Rich. So those are 4 books that if you haven't read those 4 books, those are 4 books that you really need to get started with in your entrepreneur journey game. And then the 5th one that I'll give you guys is, we had her on our very first show, which is Exit Rich, Sharon Lechter. It's with starting with the end in mind in your business. What kind of business do you have, and what is your exit strategy, so that you can, run your business that way. So I think that was a huge one. That was a big eye opener, and it gives you different aspects of what type of business that you have, and how is the paint by number for you to be able to do that based on the type of business that you have. So hopefully you can add that to your future plans for your cash flow in your business. So that's your guys' Money Minute for tonight.
Okay, and pretty soon you're going to add to that list, because my ebook is coming out. So finally finished editing it. I put it out for some people. So once I get that feedback, we can get that released. And I know who I'm coming to help me make sure that everything is perfect when I get it out there on Amazon. I was interested. I can't wait for you to share those tips and tricks with everyone too. But yeah, tonight was really good. I love a lot of what Lisa had to say. I think, just that speaking, I love that they meet them, people where they are, because it's so difficult to overcome. You don't even necessarily understand what your hesitation is, but the fact that she recognizes that and just says, okay, well, then let's not talk about that. Let's focus on what you need to focus on. Let's tell the parts of your story that are really going to resonate. I think I would be one of those ones that she would, it would drive her crazy having to truncate and rein me in, because I think I'm super hilarious most of the time. And she's going to just be like, okay, you can remove 80% of those jokes and let's talk about what we want to talk about here, so that people get what they need out of it. But yeah, the focus piece, and the fact that, don't try to bloat a talk with things that don't necessarily matter. That was one of the other things that I felt like, when she was talking to you about, just how do you balance that vulnerability with the logical aspect of it. And it's just like, well, if there's no need for you to be vulnerable, then don't. Or the vulnerability is in the fact that, like she said, you're up there talking. It's different. You are exposing yourself, but talk about what you know. So that was kind of my key takeaways from what she said.
Yeah, I'd have to say same. It was really great. For some reason, I got excited about public speaking again from having her on the show. I'm like, ooh, I want to go do some speaking, which is like kind of odd, I guess, right? But for some reason, it got me kind of excited to go out there and share with people. So I hope it did for some of the people that watch this as well. But I think there's just such power in knowing our story and being clear on what that is and purpose in our message. And so to have someone, because I have a feeling that she's not a pushover, right? So you can laugh, Jana. I don't know if she'd be able to rein me in. I have a feeling she'd do just fine. But someone that can kind of reel you in and keep you focused, so you are delivering a powerful message. I do love that she's a woman in business too. I'm not going to lie. I love that. That just makes her more valuable to me too, right? But I love that she's helping people really just hone in what their story is too, because, the other thing is, sometimes you just have to change your story.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need someone like Lisa in your corner just to help you kind of make those little shifts, right? And once you change your story and you're speaking it out loud, things are just going to continue to grow and change. So I thought it was really powerful. I loved having her on the show. I did sign up to get her 5 tips. So we had it on there for you. Make sure you guys go do that. Check her out. She's got a lot of information. She's on all the social media channels. She's down here in SoCal. She's part of the eWomen's Network here in SoCal, Newport Beach area. So she's everywhere. You guys can't miss her. Learn how to get clear on your message, your voice, and get some talks under your belt. What'd she say? It's the quickest way to cash flow is to get a speaking gig. So there you go.
I like that.
I like that. Yes. Me too. You can bust it out an hour a week, people. Right. Awesome. You guys, thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being here. Shanna, thank you just for being here, for all that you do for the show. Carlton, we didn't get to see you on screen, but we could just never make all this magic happen without you. Thank you again, everyone who joined us. Make sure you do something this week to help you better your business. Go check out those books that I mentioned if you haven't already, and we will see you guys soon. Have a great week, everyone.
Our goal is simple: to help you achieve the dream and vision you first had when you thought about starting a business. We're here to make growing your business less complicated. There are building blocks to build a sustainable business. We promise to seek them out and address them all. The Better Your Business Show starts now.